So, Sandy, can you explain a little bit for everybody about your background and your role at the moment?
My background is non-traditional. And like many people in the construction industry, it was accidental. But when it happened, it made sense. So there was a eureka moment. And I think one of the reasons why I'm passionate about making a better job of talking about construction is that it's irresistible when you know, but if you don't know, how do you find it? So I loved doing things when I was a kid, and my father was very practical, and he taught me how to saw wood, he taught me how to drill, he taught me how to wire a plug, he taught me how to hang wallpaper. I'm the only one in the family who can hang wallpaper. No, I'm wrong. My daughter-in-law can now hang wallpaper because I taught her. But I couldn't see how that was going to be a job.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a huge issue here on what you feel you want to do and the route you take to get there. So I, like many people, found myself in construction by a selection of happy coincidences. And I love it. But there are other things as well. And I think construction embraces all sorts of things. It's creative. It's not just digging on site. So it's seeing that construction is something all around us. But it took me a while to get there. And when I got there, I thought, this is it. This is it. This is construction.
So what was there a pivotal moment? Was there one thing? Was it doing a particular course or studying something? Or was it getting involved in a project? What was that one moment?
It was being offered a job on the weekly construction newspaper, Construction News, which was by chance. And they were fantastic men there. And I believe I was the first woman construction journalist. And I was taken on to do a job. And after, 3 weeks or so, one of them said to me, you know what? You're doing this job in 2 days a week that the previous person did in 5. Let's find something else to do on those other 3 days. And so I did news reporting, feature writing, sub-editing, and the other 2 days were the days doing the job I was taken on to do. So I had fantastic, they weren't mentors, they were just saying, great, what should we do with this? And that was the moment for me. But I think the really important thing is to say to people, don't just take the opportunity, hold it, file it somewhere. Do something with that opportunity or really make the most of that opportunity. So that was it. And I just thought, and I just love construction. I just think it's miraculous.
So you're, from that moment in Construction News, and now you're the incoming president of CIOB, was there another eureka moment in there? Was there a particular committee you joined or a certain task that you had that got you from being a journalist on Construction News all the way up to the absolute peak of the construction industry?
One of the jobs I took on, because I then went on, we formed our own business. My husband is a civil engineer and I formed a business because people asked us to do things. And I became involved with the International Federation of Consulting Engineers, which is an amazing organisation. It's global. And I found I had a certain skill. And this is where, like most women, you think, I'm bigging myself up here, but I found that I could sit in a room of people from a whole range of different backgrounds, different nationalities, and could help them distill down what it was they wanted to say. Mm. So I would be in a cross-section of engineers from around the world saying, how do we deal with professional ethics? How do we deal with sustainability? How do we capture that, get consensus, and express it in a way that everybody understands? And as part of that work, I got involved with drafting standard conditions of contract. So I was working with the World Bank and NGOs. And it was a sort of interpreting, distilling, but being involved in the enterprise, feeling it's a really important thing to do. And I then found that there were significant changes in the law. So I wrote a big piece on the implications of the changes in law on professional engineering. And I was going to publish this in the journal that was going around the world. And I had that sudden moment when I thought, well, perhaps somebody should check the homework. So I sent it to a lawyer I'd heard speaking, saying, this is rather cheeky of me, but I'm writing this piece. Would you mind looking over it for me? And he phoned me up and said, let's have lunch. So we had lunch. And he said, you've got it all right, here you are. And he drew lots of diagrams on the napkin. And then he said, do you know I'm setting up this course in construction law and arbitration at King's College London? And I said, yes, I do. I was going to do something about it. He said, you should do it. And I said, what? And he said, yes, he said, you understand this business, you understand the industry. All you need are 2 references. And I got 6 because I thought, you know what, 2's not enough when they're going to say, this woman wants to do this and she has no first degree. It was a master's course. So I got my 6 references and I got the place. 40 people, 38 men, 2 women. And I was one of the 2 women. And that was a significant moment.
Yeah.
And I found myself on this course, 20 lawyers, 20 construction professionals, and I was the odd one. And I think that's another interesting thing, which is difference is actually a distinction. And I spent a lot of time thinking, well, I'm the odd one.
Mm.
Fine. Being the odd one is fine. And I did it. But I still had that moment at the end, and I did it, and I completed it, and I got distinction in the modules. And I was still thinking, but I didn't do a first degree. So in brackets, this is all a bit of a con.
Mm.
And so I think it's, don't underestimate what you know, take the opportunity, ask, and then savour it. But it took me a while to get that.
Mm.
So that was an important moment.
Mm.
So I found construction. I was then given a validity.
Yeah.
And it opened doors. And when I was doing that, that was at the same time that there was this major review in construction, which was looking at how do we make it better. And some of the things that were being looked at tied in with some of the things I'd identified in my thesis, which is we have an industry that is adversarial, it's expensive, it's always over budget, most people think it's awful. How do we change this? And is there a relationship between that and the fact there are fewer women than any other industry? But you still have the monkey on your shoulder saying, but you didn't get a first degree.
Mm.
You've got a master's, but you didn't get a first degree. And I think it's something we need to deal with.
Yeah.
Which is the imposter syndrome.
Absolutely, which men and women both have, but it's
Yes.
been proven that women have it more than men. And
Absolutely.
we see that in applications, not just in construction, but applications to jobs, that men need, when they look at a job spec, they need less almost to match the job spec than a woman would need, quite significantly less before they apply for the job.
Yes.
How do you think that we can get more women, or let's widen it and say more diversity into construction, because traditionally it has been a less diverse industry, one of the least diverse ones?
I think there's always been an issue about how construction is seen generally by people. So we need to professionalise it. And I think that if they see, as they do in Europe, that construction is a profession, rather than if you can't find a job anywhere else, you can get a job on site. It's that perception of the industry, which we've been talking about for years. I think there are a number of things we need to do. One is the identity, the image of the industry. I think the industry has to be better at positioning itself as an influencer rather than an economic regulator. I think the change has been enormous in that we have more women in the industry than we used to.
Absolutely.
We have women at the top we didn't have before.
Yeah.
So great. How do we then continue? So we have the image thing, which is professionalising it. I think the industry has to be better at being a positive political with a small p influencer. You can stop somebody in the street and say, name an architect.
Yeah.
And you'll get Christopher Wren, especially here.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll get Norman Foster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
For the industry.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you have the issue around, well, there are volume house builders, and then there's the other lot, which can be anything from HS2 to the chap with a white van
Yes.
and a ladder.
Yes.
So somehow we have to elevate it and bring the magic back. How do you get A, the magic,
Yes.
and B, the importance? And it's important.
Mm.
And that will change the view of it as being a profession. So we have an issue on how the industry is perceived,
Mm-hmm.
but in return, the industry has to behave appropriately.
Yes. Absolutely.
So there's a selection of things, but I think we all know what to do. We just need to push it.
I don't think that we as an industry almost talk enough about the value that we add, or do you think that we do, or could we do that better, do you think? Because we had so much social value, I think, as an industry.
It can be something quite small. It can be something like, well, if we can do this, we'll have a transport hub and we'll clean up the Quaggy River. Sort of funny little bit of stream. We'll clean it up and we'll get community work-ins. That's what it's all about. And then people engage.
Mm.
I think there's also other things about helping people realise they are part of it. There are ways of doing it.
Mm.
The challenge is, how do you scale it up?
Exactly.
How do you scale it up?
Which is kind of the same when we're talking about scaling up and a problem and how to deal with it. That's the biggest problem we face, probably as a community, as a country right now, is net carbon zero and how we deliver this. And we, as a construction industry, are absolutely the forefront of that because of the carbon emissions out of houses, and also how we travel from A to B, and also office spaces.
We can do it sensibly, and I think the whole thing around how you provide a working environment that is sustainable and human and conscious of all the pressures that are on us, from what you're using to build, to what it costs to run, to how you sustain it, and then how you dispose of it, and how you deliver it in a way that people say, this is a tremendous contribution to our lives rather than a necessary evil.
How or what steps do we need to take as an industry to deliver this? What do you think are going to be those important milestones or things that we need to do?
I think the industry has a huge potential here, in that it does understand it, but we need to find a way of building it into the whole procurement, new build, retrofit program. But it's an incredible carrot to get the other missing thing, which is we don't have enough people.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't have enough people. What do young people care about? Yeah. They care passionately about sustainability and climate change. So how do we create, back to the identity, how do we create an industry that says we can do something about this? If you join this industry, you can look at the cost of building, the cost of buildings in use, and really importantly, how do you reuse the buildings? And there's a lot of really interesting work there. And I mean, it's years, it must be 30 years ago, I'm very conscious now of being around a long time, but some 30 years ago, I listened to an amazing Swiss engineer who devised a plan for a small community that was not only sustainable in itself, but they had actually worked into it how it could be reused and reformatted in the future. So it's all there.
Yes.
It's all there. How do we find the will? So we need storytellers.
Yes.
We need influencers. And we need joined up thinking. And I think if we can get everybody involved, so we all get out of our silos, the engineers, the architects, the surveyors, the funders, the clients, the contractors, You get out of a silo and you say, how will this work? How do we pull this together so that we can put forward a very persuasive argument? We have to do it. We have to do it. I feel so passionately for it.
So, Sandi, we've spoken a lot about individuals in sustainability, but who are the other impactful players as we get ourselves to net carbon zero?
I think that the corporates, the companies, and finding a way of showing, well, both delivering in a sustainable way, but also influencing in a sustainable way. We've talked a bit about politics and policy, but I think there is something very important about the role of the professional institutions. And I think they have a role to get really more engaged beyond the interests of their membership.
Is there anything that you feel that you pass on to other people about your career and top tips that you've had?
Seize opportunities. Seize opportunities. When I was younger, I thought it was wonderful if you knew exactly what you wanted to do and you could see that route. You know, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to be a brilliant pianist and say, I'm going to be a concert pianist and this is what I'm going to do. If you've got that, fine. If you haven't and you're finding your way, be open to opportunity and grab that opportunity and make it really work. And when you've done that, don't underestimate what you know. So don't be afraid to be different. Make the most of every opportunity. Be bold, be fearless. That doesn't mean be reckless. Just be bold.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us as part of our leadership series in construction. I personally learned quite a lot from today, so I'm hoping others will have found this. So thank you so much for coming to chat to us.
That was a great pleasure.